All right, welcome to today's session. It's the sixth and last session of Tuesday Tech Talks for Parents. This week it is on responsibility and courage, reporting and conversations between students, parents, and sometimes the school. Thank you for joining us if you are live, and for those of you who are recorded, feel free to ask questions or email in questions at the end of this session or when you watch if you have anything to follow up. So I met with every class in January and asked them to take a survey. And those were the graphs and data that we had in our prior sessions. When it came to conversations, they kind of led me in different directions. So I tried to stay true with the question that I asked them, but a lot of times it was based on the age of the class that I was with or the grade, and then kind of what their answers were. So these are more anecdotal evidence than they are statistical evidence. So I asked the question to raise your hand if you have ever seen anything inappropriate online. And when I asked them, depending on the grade level, it was they'd look around and then they would sort of raise their hand, or there were some classes who were like, yep, I've seen it. So then I had to ask them, to define it. So first, what did that look like? After a little bit of probing, in grades 4 and 5, majority of them raised their hand if they've ever seen anything inappropriate. In grade 3, many raised their hand, which I then had to ask, and define what is inappropriate. And then grade 2, 1 and 2, a few raised their hand. And I did not ask this to JK in kindergarten. So we had a few in grades 1 or 2, but again, it was based on after the definition. So what did they define as inappropriate? So the first one, grades 4 and 5, mature content, foul language. So that was nudity, that was, it could have been pornography. They did not outright say that. I tried to kind of guide them a little bit into defining it. But we also defined it in things that you may cover your eyes and not want to see. And so that's how they kind of explained it to me. They're like, nope, shut it down, walk away. Foul language came in that as well. Grade 3, some mature content, again, closing it out, things they wouldn't want to see, mostly foul language. Grades 1 and 2 is almost all foul language. They really struggled with what is inappropriate. That was a big term for them. And so I let them define it as, well, those were like bad words. I think grade 1 used potty words as their definition. So that's about the landscape of what inappropriate looks like to the students in our lower school, and then what did they deem as inappropriate. Okay, so I'll just leave it there for a second. Again, this is just anecdotal evidence through conversations that I've had. So when I asked them, then what do you do when you see something inappropriate online? And we had some people shout out, close it out, run away. And then we had some people say, oh, I tell somebody. Again, it was depending on the grade level. If they were little, if they were grade 1, foul language mostly, they ran and told an adult. If it was grade 5, okay, we'll get to what they said later. So here were their options. That should be show a trusted adult. B, close out and ignore it happened. Or C, close out and tell an adult. So again, this was conversation. I said, here are some choices, because they struggled with articulating what would they do. Okay. So many of them chose, and this is grades 4 and 5, close out and ignore it happened. I found that really interesting. And I asked them why. Why would they just close out? Why would they ignore it happened? And there were 2 responses in grades 3 through 5. Again, grades 1 and 2, a lot of them did say they told a trusted adult, But again, their content, what they found was inappropriate, was mostly foul language. Okay. So tips for parents. If your child came to you and said they saw something inappropriate, what would you do? And this is where I kind of had a lot of deeper discussions with the older grades. So while this conversation may be uncomfortable for us as parents, and then we have to kind of have that conversation with a child, and it could be a child of 6, right? It could be a child of 10. You might have an older child. So what I thought we'd do today, and the whole point of this series was to build community, build resources, give tools in our tool belts for parents and the school to partner, but really to have a community in a sense that there are parents, each of us, including myself, are going through these stages and we need support. And so what I thought I'd like to do today is start with a breakout room, and you kind of get to see what the kids feel like when they go into breakout rooms. And what I ask of you when we go to do this is to share your name as a parent. We also have some teachers on the call. Ms. Persenio is running the chat box. I believe Ms. Davis is here. Dr. Seiden may be in a class, but she has joined us, so she may not be speaking. And then just share what your initial reaction or your response might be, right? Not one that you've crafted and you've thought about, you've had to think and reflect, just something that your kid came to you. What would your initial reaction or response be? And we're going to do that for about 4 minutes. So it's going to be kind of quick, but I would like you all to put a face to a name with everybody and make a connection. So we're going to go breakout rooms. Let me set that up. We're going to have 3 breakout rooms. 1, 2, 1, 2. Let me move. Okay, and we're going to do that for 4 minutes. And then you will hit join on the breakout room. And then at the end of 4 minutes, it's going to, I'll bring you back together. All right, so I'll be controlling it on the way. Here we go. Lauren said she is walking. Hopefully she can at least listen in. All right. And I'll try to join that one as well. All right. See you in 4 minutes.
Can't hear you.
It muted me right away. Sorry. So thank you. Hopefully you made a connection with one parent, and that you can, maybe if we have community events in the future, you can at least notice and recognize somebody, or reach out again for community support. What I find interesting is that, it's both groups said it kind of depends on what it is, right? So what is it? And what our reaction would be to. So here's what the kids said. What do you do when you see something inappropriate online? And I'm going to talk about grades 4 and 5 mostly. They chose B, close out and ignore it happen. Majority of them. And then I asked them why. Number one reason that they said overwhelmingly, I didn't need to tally it, this happened in every single classroom, overreaction. It was an overreaction, and the fear of overreaction to the loss of device, the loss of the specific app, the loss of anything related to that specific situation. So they fear how, or maybe they have some relation with something that happens when they do something wrong, that they lose it, and that they're not going to come and tell you as a parent because of overreaction. And they specifically.
Excuse me, just a second. Are you meaning to present?
Yes, thank you.
Because
See, this is where my hiccups occur, when I make changes in my presentation. Thank you, thank you. I'm gonna go window. Much appreciated, Ms. Briseno, keeping me on track here. This is why co-teaching is helpful.
That's
All
all,
right,
Ms.
so
Davis.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Davis. All right, so what do kids say? We'll go back a little bit. What do kids say? They close out and ignore. Number one reason not to tell an adult is overreaction. Okay. Loss of device, lots of app play, lots of anything related to that situation. Reason number two, not to tell an adult, embarrassment. And I thought that was interesting. Especially when they're older, they don't want to talk about it. They said no way, never did they want to have that conversation with their parent. And so later I have a couple of resources on some how-tos of that. Okay. So those are the two reasons, again, overwhelmingly, especially grades 4 and 5. Okay. So if they did come to you, I've taken this from Deal With It, internetmatters.com, out of the UK, actually. Here are some follow-up questions you might want to ask to get them talking. The first thing you would want to know is, did they do it by accident? Was it by accident, or were they curious and were they searching? Because those are two different things, right? Okay, and then we want to talk about their feelings. How did they feel when they saw that? And then, of course, staying calm, not overreacting, and then discuss again how it made them feel. What was the need? If they were searching, what was the need that made them feel that they had to do that? And then what emotional support may they need so that they don't have something imprinted. They already see it, they can't unsee it, but how do you nurture them back for the future? And then if they can't talk to you, we need to find a counselor, right? So the partner with the school, each division has a school counselor, and then they may even have other resources and tips for local counselors in our community. The last thing you may want to do is, again, check your parental controls and filters. Okay. Any questions here for inappropriate content? All right, so where does the school come in into all this? So I interviewed Mr. Novak, our Dean of Students, and he said there's oftentimes, again, it depends on the situation, but there's something called care and concern. And that if the school receives information about a certain student, that they may be involved, with an umbrella called care and concern. And this is not a disciplinary action. It's just a phone call or a reach out to say, hey, this is what's happening, and communicate that with the family. Lower level name calling online, lower level exclusions from friend groups. And by that, he meant like, you're calling them jerk, or, hey, I don't want to be friends with you right now, or things like that. Just very, very basic, low, just surface level issues. There could be incident of school uniform and online videos with inappropriate content, lyrics specifically, and it has St. Andrews on there. And so we would want not to have that out on the public realm of social media. Okay. So we also talked about the school may contact those families, but if it continues, if it's a pattern of behavior where the school has to stay involved, it could result in disciplinary response. Okay, so that's just the care and concern area. Now, if it got into school involvement for disciplinary investigations, this would be a little bit heightened. So it would start with an investigation, and it doesn't mean that if the investigation doesn't come up with anything, then there's no action to be taken. But sometimes there is action the school must take. Threats of violence, racial comments, disparaging remarks. And again, it depends on the severity and the findings. But the discipline can range from the meetings, reflections, apologies, detention, suspension, and the worst one would be expulsion or separation from the school. So I thought what was interesting, what he said though, was like pairing the disciplinary action with an educational component is really what we try to do most of the times. It doesn't always happen, but he made this statement: as the youngest age division, our educational component is very important for the growth of the student. And I think that's where you get the mind, body, spirit here at St. Andrews. So I have one more scenario, and we'll just kind of talk about it. I'll let you take a minute to read it, and then I'll read it out loud. Okay, so Mark is a sixth grader. His mom posted a photo of him becoming a lifeguard. And then his friends, who must have been able to see it because the mom tagged Mark on social media, now has reposted and is teasing Mark because they think he looks silly. And even one wrote a comment saying he saw him cheat on the first aid test. So here are some questions to think about. Who is at fault for spreading the misinformation that Mark cheated on his first aid test? Do you think people who don't know Mark well will know his friends were teasing? And then we would want to list some of those long-term consequences with these posts that Mark could have on Mark. And then what could the situation have been, or how could this situation have been handled differently? So I got this from a book called Raising Humans in a Digital World. And it has a couple scenarios like this that I think are interesting and really make you think about it. And it's almost like the unintentional, right? We share something and it's hurtful to somebody else, but it wasn't intended to be. And I think that's where we want to talk about with our students of what we share on the internet, comments that we make on the internet. Although it may not have been ill-intended, it does harm at least one person, and we don't want that. So these are conversations that you can have at home, and we will, and we do them in class. And we had a couple of these when I met with each class, and then kind of see and kind of pick their brain. But I think when you're in a small group compared to a classroom of a large group, the answers I think are more thoughtful and provoking. You can kind of see where your child is on what they perceive happens on the internet. Okay. So when in doubt, of course, talk it out. I think that's the hardest part, is knowing what to say in parenting or how to go about it. And you don't want to make a misstep, or your child doesn't want to have those conversations with you. So I found these resources. One is Bark's Tip for Having Difficult Conversations. It's an article, ironically, that came out about a month ago. I found a scenario card. That's something we use in school. I think it's nice to have. Mr. Reddy does things like that as well in her guidance classes. And then I really always find what to do when your child is cyberbullied. But I found one resource that says what to do or how to guide your child when they are the cyberbully. And that could be any one of our children. And either they do it intentionally, which is cyberbullying, right? Is continuous over and over. And cyberbully defined is very different from bullying in the classroom. And so we have to navigate that differently. And then when you talk about pornography, when parents struggle to talk about it, because at the youngest ages, they may see it, again, accidental or curiosity. And I found a cute picture book by Cover Only. I haven't ordered it. I'll probably order it this week and go through it. But a picture book on how to talk to your children about pornography. The reviews were great. They had lots of reviews on it. And it's just, how do you do that proactively? But I also think that it might be a good resource if it happens reactively. And then recently I stumbled upon Parent Trap, and they have a couple episodes that are relevant as well, but these were all from the pandemic. So it happens from about April or May through July, and about 6 or 7 episodes that I think are good to start listening to. And they give some conversation back and forth between the host and some parents. Okay. Otherwise, I thank you for joining. If you have any questions, I will stay on. But in this 6-part series, I hope you were able to take away something and have tools in your tool belt. And I do hope to do this next school year, more maybe on a monthly basis than a weekly basis, and be able to create our community for support and guidance throughout the year.